This is a special edition of WeatherScope, comprehensive coverage of Hurricane Fran from the Weather Channel.
Hurricane Fran getting set to make landfall. It's a Category 3 hurricane, a dangerous storm, and we've got continuing coverage. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. I'm Mike Seidel here in the Weather Channel Forecast Center from Atlanta, and we are joined this time around by our tropical specialist, John Hope. And John, you have followed hurricanes since well before I was born, and how does this rack up? Now, we know the last time Wilmington was hit was way back in the mid-50s.
Yeah, well, this is a Category 3. We were fearful last night that it might wind up being a Category 4, such as Hugo was in 1989. Didn't do that. We didn't see any strengthening really in the last 24 hours. And now the center is so close to land that we feel confident that it won't get any stronger than it is.
So fortunately, the Gulf Stream did not add some extra punch to the storm.
No, you can't always be sure that that's going to happen. We know the energy's there. We know the water is warm, and we didn't see anything in the upper atmosphere that would seem to hinder development. But nevertheless, even under those circumstances, they don't always increase.
Well, we have seen the pressure come up now. This is the latest from the National Hurricane Center. We'll have our next advisory at 9. This is the intermediate, and we just got a fix. And the pressure, 957 millibars. It's now 40 miles the center. The eye of Fran, 40 miles south of Wilmington, North Carolina. Winds of 115 miles an hour sustained. We've had wind gusts already reported at around the coast, around Cape Fear, as high as 120 miles an hour. So we certainly have a very dangerous situation along those beach areas.
And it's a very wide area to the east as we see what the distribution of wind is. The hurricane force winds extend out a long way east of the center of the hurricane, so all that's going to be moving ashore now. So lots of winds coming in on the coast.
Here's a shot now of Fran from space, and remember the reds and oranges indicating those higher or colder cloud tops. The convection, and if you look close enough, John, you can almost see the eye, although it looks a bit ragged to me as it makes that move towards land.
Well, it does look ragged, and this is very common now. Of course, it's gone across the Gulf Stream now. And some of the circulation is over land, and usually a hurricane will get distorted a little bit when you have that much of the circulation over land.
One thing we want to mention is the wind around the hurricane blowing in this direction, blowing counterclockwise. So those of us who have been following the storm and talking to Jeff Morrow at Myrtle Beach down here, they're getting an offshore wind, and that is really helping them as far as the beachfront property is concerned.
That's right. There's not going to be any appreciable storm surge to the west of where the eye comes in, and that's where Myrtle Beach is. Now, from the point where the eye comes in, which is around Cape Fear, on east 40 or 50 miles, that's where we're looking for our big storm surge of perhaps 12 to 16 feet.
We're talking about places like Curry Beach, Carolina Beach, up to Wrightsville Beach. That would be Cape Fear. Right here is Cape Fear. Here's the state line. Myrtle Beach is right in here. But you can see, John, right here, a little concern about this area of convection. That looks very impressive, at least from a satellite photography standpoint.
And when we mentioned those beaches, you just mentioned Curry Beach and Wrightsville Beach and Topsville Beach, the very ones that took the beating in Hurricane Bertha.
And also notice, though, back inland, we're already getting heavy rain around the Raleigh-Durham area. So these spiral rain bands will be moving onshore and up into this mountainous terrain. And that is going to be the other story. Certainly once Fran gets onshore and the winds start to diminish due to the frictional effects and the fact that Fran's going to be cut off from its energy source, the warm Atlantic water. Here's our shot. This is our radar out of the coast, or Doppler radar, in the latest image, 3-4 minutes old. And you can see now, John, that the eye wall, at least the northern eye wall, is just about on shore here around Cape Fear.
Well, right at Cape Fear, they're getting the very worst this hurricane has to offer right now, because that's where the winds are the strongest, right in the eye wall. And with the northward moving hurricane, and with this hurricane in particular, the strongest winds in the hurricane are in that north eye wall.
Okay, I'm just drawing on the coastal boundaries, and Cape Fear right in here, Myrtle Beach right here. So those of you watching from Horry County, where there has been mandatory evacuation east of Highway 17 in the bypass since yesterday at 2, still getting some pretty tremendous rain bands blowing in now as that storm circulates the rains off the Atlantic.
That rain is going to be very, very heavy, and it's going to extend inland pretty rapidly. It already has, as you can see that. And even after, as you pointed out, the hurricane dies, as all hurricanes do over land, the precipitation is not going to dwindle. It's going to be heavy. It's going to be enhanced some by the mountains. And so we could be looking at a situation with an awful lot of rain and the potential for flooding.
Okay, John, what do you make of this? I've noticed here on the northern eye wall, we're getting Obviously heavy rains, a lot of bright colors, but on the southern eye wall, it's hardly even intact radar-wise.
Well, I'm not quite sure. I don't think we have anywhere near as much rain on the south of the eye as we have to the north of it, but some of the radar might be cut out there a little bit. There might be a little bit of attenuation. But I do think that once the eye goes past and the hurricane continues to move to the north, that the rain is not going to last very long to the south of the eye.
We've got hurricane warnings continuing from the North Carolina-Virginia border south to Edisto, but again, the worst weather in the next 3 to 4 hours will be along and to the right of the center of the landfall. The eye of Hurricane Fran now making a move towards Cape Fear, and those hurricane force winds already on shore, and that means that hurricane conditions continuing, and these are the areas which are going to be really hit hard, as John mentioned, along and to the right, anywhere from Cape Fear up towards Wrightsville Beach. That the storm surge could total up as high, get this, as high as 16 feet. Now, a wind gust now coming in from Wilmington, John, although Wilmington is not right on the coast, 81 miles an hour.
That's a gust, and very, very strong winds. They've had a tremendous fall and pressure at Wilmington, and the center of the hurricane is aimed pretty much in that direction.
Okay, now let's touch base on that storm surge again. We're talking about 12 to 16 feet. Unlikely now. We probably want to adjust this here on the air, but it's unlikely we're going to see that kind of storm surge here in Horry County around the Myrtle Beach area.
You're absolutely correct. The storm surge is going to be from the point where the eye crosses the coastline on up to the northeast.
In these areas here,
Correct.
Anywhere from 12 to 16 feet. That obviously will be the big concern, because although the winds are strong, and we've already had reports of some damage from our crews in Myrtle Beach and Wrightsville Beach, the wall of water, that storm surge will be coming on shore. Fortunately, coming on shore at time of low tide or as the tide goes out.
Very, very nearly so. We had a high tide this afternoon, and the next one is not until after midnight, and by that time we think the eye of the hurricane will be well inland. And
because of the serious weather, we've had to kind of keep the satellite dishes at bay and keep them in safe haven, but we do have on the phone Tom Ditt. He is with the emergency management folks in southeastern sections of North Carolina. Tom, give us the latest, and what have you heard as far as damage from those areas around Wilmington?
The water spout that hit the Surf City Bridge further up the coastline from Wilmington. This is the same area that got Bertha's impact several weeks ago. Also, we lost a mobile home which was being used by the police department in North Topsail Beach.
How many shelters do you have right now open, and can you give me an estimate of how many people are in those shelters this evening?
We have 106 shelters open across eastern North Carolina, and the last information we have on numbers, over 1,100 in shelters.
Have you had any reports of the power going out yet?
We have widespread power outages across those areas, down trees, power lines, anything that's going to be associated with high winds.
And where are you sitting right now as you talk to us on the phone?
I'm in the state EOC in Raleigh.
Okay, and even in Raleigh, you're getting some of the fringe effects already.
Notice coming into work about an hour ago, heavy rain here in the Raleigh area.
John Hope has a question for you.
Tom, do you have any assessment yet on how this might compare with Bertha down there as far as the damage you've heard about so far?
We're talking a category stage higher, John, so we can expect that the damage is going to be a little bit higher than what we saw during Bertha. But of course, Bertha came on up the coast and turned inland towards Swansboro, whereas Fran is coming inland over the Cape Fear area and Wilmington.
Okay, Tom, that is certainly a nice update. We got the word there. Thousands in shelters, 106 shelters open in eastern North Carolina, so everybody got out of harm's way, and for good reason. Also in the thick of things, the Weather Channel's Jill Brown. She joins us now on the phone again from the Bolivia, North Carolina area. That is southeast of Wilmington, not far from the coast in Brunswick County. And Jill, what is the weather like there right now?
Well, Mike, we are at the Emergency Operations Center here in Brunswick County, and the winds, of course, are howling. They were gusting over 100 miles per hour an hour ago, and of course will continue to strengthen at this point. We actually have a terrific setup right where we are. We're on the south side of the building, so we have blocked the winds basically by the building. We had a terrific shot for you earlier, but the problem is that the rain is so heavy that the satellite, basically we can't get through the rain to get to the satellite. But we're in a good location, a safe location at the Emergency Operations Center. It's not a shelter, but they do have 4 shelters open in Brunswick County with about 1,700 people in them. Here at the shelter, they have the Weather Channel on the big screen, by the way, if the satellite holds up. And they told us when we got here about an hour and a half ago that this is ground zero, according to the National Hurricane Center. About a half hour later, they started getting a little hopeful that they thought they was going to make this, the eye was going to make that turn and head to the north. But I talked to you, John, about that, and you told me that that's probably not going to happen, so they are prepared. They've had reports, of course, of trees down mainly so far, but other than that, not a whole lot of injuries.
And where did you drive in from this afternoon and this evening to Bolivia? Where were you before?
We came up from the Isle of Palms, of course. We were in Isle of Palms yesterday. We were in Charlotte this morning. Drove up. We, of course, saw tons of traffic heading away from the coast, as we were one of the few cars heading toward the coast, but not a huge backup. It seemed to be pretty orderly. Folks had boarded up and had taken the opportunity to get out of town when they could. I guess smart enough to know that the best way to avoid injury from Fran is to just get out of the way.
Well, Jill, what are you able to actually see now from your vantage point there in the EOC building?
Actually, we have a terrific view, again, because we're blocked by the building. We're a protected area, but we can see everything. We have a lot of pine trees around us, and as you know, they're kind of soft, so they'll bend way over, but not really fall over most times. If you're lucky. Winds are really blowing, very heavy rain. The front door had to be locked because it's on the north side. It was kind of getting sucked open. But things seem to be in order here. And again, we're not seeing much damage right around here, but they did tell me that some of their equipment, now they're going to have to go and kind of try to get it out because trees have fallen and blocking some of it. There are, of course, some trees down on the roadways, reports of some trees down on homes.
Is it your perception that the rain is increasing and the winds are increasing even as we speak?
They have been increasing somewhat. The rain, of course, tends to kind of get heavier and get a little bit lighter, as the winds will as well. But the one thing, John, that I noticed when we were in Hurricane Aaron, my producer Tim and I, talking about how it's very similar to this. Of course, this is a stronger hurricane. You had asked me, can we hear the howl? And we could hear it a little bit. Boy, could you hear it earlier here. And if I stepped outside, it's very eerie. You can hear it.
Well, what you need to look for in another couple hours is a bit of a calm there. If you get that, you'll know you're in the eye.
That's what we expect. As a matter of fact, by 9 o'clock, we're hoping if the rain lets up just a little bit, maybe if we get in between bands, we should be able to get a picture out to you. And, of course, if the eye comes right over here, as it is expected to do, we should be able to broadcast to you at that point. It's not the winds that's the problem, it's the heavy rain.
Well, we hope to see you.
Okay, Jill. We'll keep our fingers crossed for that live transmission tonight. Jill Brown reporting from Bolivia, North Carolina, in Brunswick County. Now on the phone with us is Jim Cantore. He has really been in the most serious weather. We lost our video transmission earlier because of the high winds in excess of 100 miles an hour. He's at Wrightsville Beach. We want to remind you, though, we pulled Jim away from the barrier island. We've got him over on the other side of the intercoastal, so he's in a safer place, and he's up on the second floor of the building. Jim, tell us what you're experiencing now as the eye draws closer.
Well, we're definitely experiencing the northern eye wall right now. Winds are easily sustained over hurricane force, and the gusts have been well above 100 miles an hour. As a matter of fact, as you know, Mike, you were mentioning we had to take the satellite truck down, and it was even hard getting a signal out. But we are protected here on the second floor, and we do think that when the eye wall does come on overhead, we may be able to get you another signal and give you an idea of what's going on around here. But I absolutely cannot believe the amount of overwash that's occurred. It's almost like the tide, when it came in, never went back out, even though we're going to see this thing around low tide. I don't really think that those tides came out. John, is that possible?
Well, yes. When you have a high tide like that and then the wind continues to blow, you do get the water trapped, and the water doesn't get out, and that's one element that contributes to even a higher storm surge when the center does come in.
Do you think up in the western ends of those sounds that there's going to be some flooding with this kind of wind?
Yes, I do. I think there will in those rivers, because those rivers are tidal rivers to some extent. And when you got a strong east wind, such as you'll have up there on the Sounds when the hurricane goes up to the north, indeed, you will have some flooding up some of the rivers, I'm afraid.
Well, I'm telling you, too, there's been at least 6 to 12 inches of rain here today, in addition to what we've seen over the past couple of days. So everything is extremely wet. As far as what I saw before the lights went out, if you will, and we couldn't broadcast anymore, there have been some large limbs down. We saw several transformers blow, and of course the winds and that howling sound is just very, very apparent.
Jim, can you give us some sense of how far you are from the intercoastal and how far the water has gotten? Is the water lapping at the front door there of the hotel?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't know how better to put this, but the wall is pulsating. I mean, you can feel it when the winds really gust hard, kind of pulsate in and out a little bit, because we're facing right in the direction of those winds out of the east-northeast. So we're getting the brunt of it here in the face of the hotel. But there's just no question, Mike, that we have a tremendous amount of wind energy right now with this eye wall, and we're hoping that we can definitely see a little bit of a break here, because it's kind of nerving to just deal with this for a long period of time.
Okay, Jim, stay safe, and hopefully we'll get a shot from the eye wall. I think that would be maybe a first here on the Weather Channel, and that may happen in the next hour or so as Fran crosses near Wrightsville Beach. That was Jim Cantore. Also on the line is Jeff Morrow, the Weather Channel's Jeff Morrow from Myrtle Beach. Again, weather causing some problems with satellite transmissions. No surprise here, but Jeff is in a different situation because the wind there is blowing offshore.
That's exactly right, Mike. We do have an offshore wind here, and that has helped tremendously. It's made all the difference, really, as far as any storm surge is concerned. Also, the fact, and I heard you talking a little bit earlier about the fact that this storm is coming in at low tide, or a relatively low tide, and that is good news. So those two things combined, an offshore wind and a relatively low tide, and it really is combined to help out with really no storm surge damage at all. Now, the wind is a different story. The wind has been very gusty here. We've had wind gusts, and I've had the opportunity to have an anemometer right outside here. There's a guy that has a portable one, and it's pretty well calibrated. 62 mile-an-hour wind gusts we had not too long ago. I think these tall buildings are helping out with funneling the wind a little bit from the west out toward the ocean to the east, but it is causing a little bit of damage. We do have some debris blowing around. We've had some transformers blowing out. The power is still on here, and obviously we still have a phone connection, but part of one of the buildings, the hotels down the street, did come off, and it blew away too. So we can only think of what might have happened if this would have come a little closer.
Well, Jeff, a little bit earlier when we were able to see you live, we noticed the waves, the seas crashing on shore almost up to the dune line. Is that as far as the water has progressed, or has it crossed the dune line, even though the tide is going out?
No, it's pretty much right where it was when I was showing you the pictures a little bit earlier. The surf still tremendous. I would estimate at least 15-foot breakers coming in, perhaps even a little bit higher, a little bit farther offshore. It was hard to see because it was raining fairly hard, and it is still raining hard here, I must say. We've had to have had several inches of rain so far, and I realize that we're on the southwest side of the storm now, but we have to still be in one of the fairly intense rain bands because it has been raining steadily and really blowing in that 40 to 60 mile-an-hour range for the better part of about 2 hours now.
You're right, Jeff, because we're looking at radar here at the Weather Channel, and the eye wall, that heavy rain band John and I have been noticing, is kind of rotating around towards you from the north and northeast. So you're going to see some heavier rains and some more drenching downpours over the next couple of hours before the situation improves. Jeff, thanks for that update from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. The Weather Channel's Jeff Morrow. Now, the other story we want to touch on briefly is what happens after the hurricane makes landfall, and that is the possibility of tornadoes.
It's going to make landfall pretty soon. As a matter of fact, looking at the latest radar picture and the satellite picture, that eye is almost on shore at Cape Pier. Well, we don't know for sure, of course, about tornadoes, but a lot of times when a hurricane makes landfall, we do see tornadoes. And I would point out that generally speaking, they don't occur really in the eye wall. They're more likely to occur in the outer band, so there's always a possibility this will happen with a landfalling hurricane. No reports so far, I think. No reports yet of any touchdowns. Unfortunately, most tornadoes with hurricanes are minor tornadoes. That's going to wrap up this edition of WeatherScope. Special coverage of Hurricane Fran. We'll have more live reports from the beaches in about 10 minutes at 9 Eastern. That would be 8 Central. Coming back after a break, we will have the latest tropical update again in case you turned in late, and also the latest on what could be a new tropical storm brewing out near the islands. We hope not, but we have a strong depression there that might be a storm very soon.
Stay with us. We'll be right back here on the Weather Channel.